until midday. This is the morning program with Gary Adshead on 882 6PR, the voice of Perth.
All right, a lot happening with fluoride in the water today. Something that we probably all of us just accept is in the water. It's been there since the 1960s, and it was all around improving the health of our teeth. But of course, there are people who say it is mass medication. It is forced upon us, and we don't know the consequences of that fluoride that we ingest, if you like, on a daily basis. Well, a report from the state government's come out today to say that it increases the chances of a child having healthy teeth. In fact, anyone living in an area where the water is fluoridated has a much better chance of having healthy teeth than someone who doesn't, about 60% more likely to have bad teeth if you live in an area without water fluoridation. Kathy O'Leary's written a story in the West this morning. John Day, the health minister, who happens to be a dentist as well, is saying that the nonsense around the risks or the concerns around fluoride, they should be a thing of the past. It all coincides, of course, with a national study, the National Health and Medical Research Council's review of water fluoridation, which is absolutely certain there is no risk to people who are drinking water with fluoride in it. In fact, there are much more beneficial reasons to do so. So with that, Health Minister John Day joins us. Thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome, Gary.
You're in the unique position of being a dentist and health minister. What do you say to all the conspiracy theories out there about fluoride in the water?
What I say is that based on all of the reputable and overwhelming scientific evidence by many organisations and backed by organisations like the World Health Organisation, the Australian National Health and Medical Research Council, the ADA, the AMA, and many universities, is that fluoride in our water supplies at the level at which it is added to help reduce tooth decay is entirely safe and very beneficial in reducing the amount of decay in our community.
And you would have been practising when some of the debate was going on. I mean, as a dentist, have you got any doubt whatsoever that the benefits are there?
I have no doubt, based on my experience, all that I learned when I was a dental student at the University of WA and what I've seen since, that there is much less tooth decay and tooth loss in our community now since fluoride was first introduced for most of Western Australia, in fact, back in 1968. So that was well before I started practising as a dentist, but I know that those who were working as dentists back in that era and pre-then quite routinely had to extract either many or in some cases all of quite young people's teeth in some cases, and it was a very sad situation, and I know that led to a lot of pressure from the dental community and the Australian Dental Association back in the 1960s for this measure to be introduced, and it has had an enormously beneficial effect on the West Australian community overall.
Has there been any doubt? Obviously, some areas of Western Australia have been sort of slower to receive fluoridation, but when it's happened, can you see the comparison of, say, kids in Perth and then kids in the southwest that are starting to get fluoride in their water?
Yeah, so what's been shown through this recent study, which was only completed in the last year or so, and based on the examinations of about 11,000 children, comparing those in the southwest, Bunbury, Busselton, Margaret River areas where they generally don't have fluoridated water, or at least not at the level that's ideal, and comparing those with those children in Perth who do have fluoridated water. In the non-fluoridated areas, there's about a 50 to 60% higher incidence of dental decay, of children having one or more teeth that either has decay or they have lost as a result of decay. So that's quite a significant difference, and I think does bear out all of the other research that's been done over many years.
You're looking to extend it up to Yanchep. It's taken a while, hasn't it?
Yes, some of the smaller water supply facilities around the state haven't been fluoridated to this point, but there is a program underway where just in the last month or so it has been introduced to Mora, Dongra and Port Denison, and there's arrangements in place following community consultation, I must say, although not everybody expresses their support. There's always some vocal minority, but it is also intended to be introduced in Port Hedland, Newman, Kununurra and Yanchep by the end of next year. We do have a fluoridation advisory committee, and as Minister for Health, and my predecessor Kim Hames was the same, we receive advice from that committee about where and when and how best to extend fluoridation of water supplies in an appropriate manner.
And so at the moment, though, there's an organisation called Fluoride Free WA. They're talking about running candidates at the next election. They are about to petition as well, Parliament. What do you say to them? I mean, they put out some pretty extraordinary information, talking about the mass medication of people and how too much fluoride obviously is toxic, and we don't realise what it's doing to our brain.
Well, that's correct that too much fluoride, like too much of anything, can be toxic and very harmful, but at the level of less than 1 part per million that it's added to the water supplies, all of the reputable scientific evidence is that it is definitely not harmful and indeed does have a very beneficial effect. So the claims they're making are not based on any good science at all. They're quite emotive and quite extreme, but there's always going to be some people on whatever the issue is that are just not going to be convinced. But I think the overwhelming majority of the West Australian community does now accept and in fact has received fluoridated water for most of their lives. It was first introduced in Perth in 1968, following legislation going through about 50 years ago, in fact. It was quite an intense debate at the time and there was opposition, but fortunately the coalition government of the day did press forward, and there's been very substantial benefits to the West Australian community since. So we need to operate on the basis of good science from reputable scientists, not emotive claims that just don't have any real scientific basis.
Minister, thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Gary.
So that's the Health Minister, and of course he was a practising dentist as well before he went into politics. He says that there's no doubt about the benefits of fluoride, but it seems to be one of those debates that rages on. What do you think about it? Just before I go to my next guest, what do you think? Do you stop and consider that drinking the water with fluoride in it could be causing you any issues? If you do, what do you do? Do you get your water sourced from somewhere else? Do you only drink bottled water? So on and so forth. I'd like to hear from you. 922 111 882. Do you think that the anti-fluoride lobby has any real evidence that we should be concerned about? Now, James Fairbairn is the president of Fluoride Free WA. G'day, James.
Hi there, Gary. How are you?
You're good. Are you just a vocal minority that just won't accept all the evidence?
Well, I'm a vocal minority that has the vast majority of the rest of the world supporting me, so... Yeah,
how do you say that? Well, hang on, the vast majority.
Well, there's only 9 countries in the world which still fluoridate the majority of their population. 9 countries in the world. Now, if this was so wonderful, surely every country in the world would do this, and yet not one country in mainland Europe fluoridates their water. And you know what? Their tooth decay rates have come down at exactly the same rate as ours since the 1960s, because it's not that adding an industrial waste product from quinana into your drinking water that does the benefit to your teeth. It's brushing your teeth every day. It's good dental education. It's having access to dentists. Now, you know, in Scotland, where they've never fluoridated their water, a few years ago they introduced something called Child Smile. And Child Smile was an education program where they had toothbrushing lessons in primary school once a week. Do you know what that did to the tooth decay rates in Scotland? It nearly halved the dental decay rates for children in Scotland overnight and saved the National Health Service in Scotland £5 million a year, £5 million, not dollars, a year.
Well, the argument would be it's an insurance policy, isn't it? It's a way to get fluoride into the teeth, regardless of how badly someone or well someone brushes their teeth.
But you know what? That would be great if we were dealing with a benign substance that had absolutely no potential side effects, no matter how much you consume. Now, the minister goes, oh, you're only having 1 part per million. Doesn't sound that bad. But if I said we're putting 1 part per million of lead in your water...
Well, we're not, though. We're not, though.
No, but that has the same toxicity from a chemical perspective as fluoride. Now, how much fluoride do you consume every day, Gary?
How much do I consume?
Yeah.
I couldn't answer you that other than that I brush my teeth and I drink the odd glass of water.
Well, if you have, according to the World Health
and you know what? I'm 50 and I've never really had any health conditions whatsoever. And as far as I know, despite what listeners might think, I'm a fairly sound mind. So go on, tell me why. Why has it hurt me?
How many of your listeners would have a thyroid issue? How many of your listeners will have skeletal fluorosis? How many of our listeners do we know may have been infected adversely by fluoride. You cannot put a medication into the drinking water supply and control how much people consume. Now, the World Health Organization says if you have more than an average person has more than 6 milligrams a day, they're getting an overdose. They are putting their health at risk. You yourself may have maybe 2 litres of water a day, plus a couple of coffees, plus some maybe processed foods and so forth that have got fluoridated water in them. You're going to brush your teeth, going to ingest a little bit of fluoride there. You're getting a reasonable amount of dosage, but none of us are average. There's no such thing as the average person. If you've got somebody working in a high-temperature environment, say on a building site, they're drinking 8, 9, 10 litres a day. That's 10 milligrams per day.
And and where's the evidence that any of them are ill because of that?
Well, that's the problem. If you don't look, you don't get. Now, according to the Minister, and in fact your own words, it's a conspiracy theory to question this. But I've got people like Philip Grandjean from Harvard University, Professor of Dental Health at Harvard University, who brought out a study 2 years ago, which looked at over 40 different studies from around the world, which showed that children that were consuming more fluoride than other children had lower IQs. That is a risk. Now, do we want to take that risk with our children? Is it really worth that risk when we could be investing this money, exactly the same money, into proper dental education and dental services in communities like Margaret River in the southwest, where, their dental decay rates are higher than up in the city. But do you know why? Because there's less dentists down there, for a start, than in the city. You have less access in rural communities, which is why tooth decay rates are higher. Let's not stop flushing taxpayers' money down the toilet, which is exactly what you're doing. You're literally flushing 99.5% of this medicated water down the drain. Let's invest that money directly into things which matter and stop playing Russian roulette with everybody's health.
Why, when any of this is ever challenged in court, say in the United States, for example, does it never get up? It's always...
Well, it's not been challenged in court because do you know how much it costs to go to court?
But the US courts have looked at the rights of a state to continue to fluoridate the water.
Only 60% of the USA is fluoridated because many communities, an increasing amount, are saying no.
Yeah, but why? Because people like you are telling them that it's bad for them, even though there's no evidence. You've got no evidence.
But also like people like Philip Grandjean of Harvard
that's one person.
Like Arvid Carlsson, Nobel laureate for medicine from Sweden. Europe had this debate back in the 1970s, and they decided that the European countries, en masse, decided this is unethical, this is dangerous, this is illogical, it's a complete waste of taxpayers' money, and there is no way of people opting out. Now, if it was completely safe for every single person in the society, you could say, fair enough. But it's not. You cannot prove it is safe for every single person in society, and therefore it is completely unethical. It's in breach of all ethical guidelines. The Hippocratic Oath that the Minister himself has signed says that you need to be able to give the patient the opportunity to opt out. You need to be checking the patient all the time. There is no way, when you medicate a population through the drinking water supply, to control how much they have, and if there are any
use the term medicate.
It is.
Isn't it sort of supplementing what's going into in our water to help as a health issue?
Everything else that gets put in your drinking water, for example chlorine, is put in there to clean the water, to take out toxicity, to take out bacteria and that side of things. The only reason why fluoride, which is actually fluorosilicic acid, is put into your drinking water is to stop tooth decay. That's the reason. That's all. That is a medication. You cannot define it in any other way other than medication.
And all the evidence of that actually working.
All the evidence, if you look no evil, see no evil. The NHRMC, which you quoted there, and the Minister quoted, they put together a panel 18 months ago. That panel, when you look at all the people on that panel, 90% of them are on record saying fluoridation is safe and effective. Now, if you keep saying it's safe and effective, and you get people who have got their entire professional reputations based on that, of course they're not going to find it. But if you went to the same group of kind of relevant level people in Europe, they would come up with a probably different opinion.
All right. Are you standing for Parliament, or is someone going to run against the candidates in the next election over this?
Well, Fluoride-Free WA are planning on fielding candidates in the next election, yes, and certainly if your listeners do want to sign up to join the party to give us the relevant numbers we need to be able to field candidates, I'd certainly advise them to go to our website, fluoridefreewa.org. yes, I will probably be putting my name forward, as many other and many other people will as well. But more importantly, we are up at Parliament today. We're delivering a petition with nearly 8,000 signatures of West Australians who say Parliament needs to look at this legislation. The Minister said himself this was looked at in 1966. That is the last time Parliament has looked at this legislation.
Oh, yeah, but they've done lots of studies in between time.
Yeah, but Parliament has not looked at it itself. The people that we charge with looking after our legislation have not had the ability, because the Minister of Health over the last 50 years has been advised by a committee which relies on fluoridation to exist itself. It's a catch-22 situation. They're not going to be the turkeys to vote for Christmas, and they will keep advising him, there is nothing to see here, there is nothing to see here. Right. I don't blame the Minister, but I think it's high-handed arrogance, the fact that he thinks he knows what is best for every single member of the WA community in terms of how much medication they should be receiving.
Right, James, he's not
a doctor himself, he's a dentist.
He's a dentist. All right, thanks for that, James. James Fairbairn, President of the Fluoride Free WA. You've heard both sides of that debate. Where do you sit on it? Is it something that you give any consideration to when you get up and have a drink of water, brush your teeth and so on, about fluoride in the water? Do you think it should be there, or do you think it should be up to you how you go about caring for your teeth? We'll take some calls after this. 9221 882 is our talkback number. It's 22 past 10.